Hello, my name is Professor Jeffrey Moser. I am here in a split position between the School of Art and Design and the Reed College of Media. I'm here to create a new minor called Interactive Media Design. Who here knows me from my presentation to the Computer Science 481? So, okay, I just want to make sure that there was some people there. My position here is to introduce visual design to journalism students and to introduce content to art students. So we've kind of bridged the gap between the two schools, downtown, out here at the CAC, and everything is culminating in the New Media Innovation Center, which just had its grand opening. I just ran from there, a little exhausted, not had a lot of time to work on this presentation, so it's going to be a little bit piecemeal. So the minor that I've introduced, we essentially are teaching art to journalism students and, again, journalistic content or understanding of the world to artists. One of the big drawbacks for artists is that their work has to be about something, usually. And many people who are in the arts don't have a lot of content. So we're trying to get them more interested in real world, social issues, journalistic issues, while bringing visual design to journalism. That's mainly what I'm focusing on right now, because I have more journalism students than I have art students in the minor. And we are, okay, great. Clearly my name, excellent. Interactive Media Design minor. So the minors only open up to art students and journalism students, but I'm hoping in the future to bridge the gap even further. Because what we're finding is that so many people want in, and I want them in. But we just started it last year, and that's my position here. Okay, so when Jordan invited me to speak today, I was a little intimidated, because all I could think was, I'm going to be here presenting with these like grandiose people that have been in the gaming world for a very long time. I teach a gaming design class in the interactive minor. I am not a gamer. I have not spent the last 20 years in the game world. I don't play games very much. A little Candy Crush. Like, you know, most people. I was like, well, what can I bring to this? You know, what can I share? And we had a conversation, and he said, well, you can bring, you know, the idea of visual design. So I want to start this off by talking about a short story. My grandmother used to work for a company that made bottle caps. She worked there from the 1960s through the 1980s. When we were kids, she gave us this 5-gallon ice cream tub filled with bottle caps. We'd play with them when we were kids, had no idea really, it didn't really mean anything to us. About 5 years ago, I found it in the attic, and I dumped it out, and I realized what an awesome collection it was. There's over 500 different unique bottle caps from this that have never been crimped at all, right? They've never been used. She worked in the sample department, so she would send one out to like a prospective customer, and then drop one in her drawer, drop another one in the drawer, and then gave them to us kids. We didn't respect them at all. So there's some scratchiness, but they're an awesome display of graphic design in 60s, 70s, and 80s. This was a time when bottles were served in glass top cabinets, which you had to look down to see what you want. There was no side labels, it was just the cap. And you had to sell a product on the cap like that. So they're awesome to look at for graphic design history. They mean a lot to me. So I've been playing with these things for a while. And immediately I was like, let's make a game. I'm gonna make a game. So, oops, it's a little blurry. So I've been flipping through these, and I've tried several times to make a game out of it. I created 3D renders of them so we could have them, let me try that again, so we can have them flipping in a game. So I did all the graphics that were necessary. And I even tried to make a sorting game and a memory game. What I realized was visual design does not make a game. Right? It takes so much more than just having a cool idea. And that's why I've presented to the capstone course to get computer programmers involved. I know some programming. I teach a little programming. Nowhere near, right, to the level. But, right, this was my message. Visual design does not make a game. It takes the two coming together, right, to really make something happen. So, if anyone's interested in working with games, just kidding. It's more to a game than visual design. And that's all I had. I was like, what else am I going to say? That to never put a red triangle next to a green square. You know, there's so much in visual design. In fact, the push has been for my minor to be an online class. And it's been a struggle for me as an in-class teacher talking about art by example, by showing solutions to problems. There's no way to say, do this and you will have great art. If there was, everyone would be an artist, right? It takes work, it takes practice. So that was the end of my presentation. I was like, what am I going to do now? Like, how do I move on? Well, the truth is, talk about what you know. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the influence of cinema on games and the influence of games on cinema. Because cinema is what I know. It's what I've been looking at for a very long time. It's where my artistic research is. It's where my love is, my passion as a small child. Movies, especially this movie. You guys familiar with the original Tron? 1982, 9 years old, in love with Tron. It made me want to get my first Commodore 64. I was vastly disappointed when I realized that Commodore 64 was not going to give me this. But it's where my thoughts on computers, on programming, on visualizations, where they all came together. On movies. This was my starting place as a human being, as an artist, as someone who likes to play around with code. As you all know, right, it's the very first movie that visualizes the inside of a computer. It's not a virtual reality movie. It's not about virtual reality. It's about actually what the computer looks like inside, which to me is just fascinating. There hasn't been movies since then that have really talked about that as much. Right? There's virtual reality movies, but it's never like, oh, we're going to the memory. We're going to the input-output port. Tron was there. Okay, so. So as a visual artist, I play around with films in many different ways. So the last thing that you saw was what I call a fixation, which is a representation of every film in a movie, all seen in one image. So this is kind of a visualization of how that, the idea of pulling back so you can see them all. This, the format was weird because it was shown on a 90-foot wall by 29 feet tall with 4 projectors, like in this big old ice warehouse. It was so cool, I wasn't there. So this is, when I started working with cinema, this was the idea that I came up with, which is to create this online database of visualizations of films. Just finished 900 this weekend, and again, capstone course, 2 groups of students are working on not only a searchable website, but also a game based on, so you memorize them and then you tag them. Anyway, what I realized, especially in science fiction, is that there's a moment later in the film in which the film breaks into chaos and color. I called it, when I was in grad school, I called it the color climax in science fiction film. It's kind of a joke. Anyway, you can see Black Hole, 1979, Disney film, right? Toward the end, it gets more exciting. There's this increase of tension, so it breaks into red. Terminator, right, also has this climax moment. You guys know what this part is? 1984 Terminator movie. Right? Who watched that? There's a new one. Who cares about the old one? But anyway, that's, I believe that's like the fireball, right, where he loses off his skin and becomes the mechanoid. It was cool in the 80s. But anyway, so I just completed 900. It's a big celebration. Woohoo, takes a lot of time. But looking through, I was like, how is this going to relate to video games? So again, color climax, the movie 7 at the end where they go out into the field and I don't want to spoil alert, but something tragic happens. The Matrix, of course. What's interesting about this is the color pattern of green, This is when they're in the virtual reality room, which is completely white. The climax gets a bit more exciting. The green color comes from the original CRT monitors, the very first computers. So Wachowski brothers, right, made it green. Revenge of the Sith also has the battle on, what's the name of the planet? I can't remember. Thank you, right? Has this action scene there at the end. Again, red indicating color climax. Big Hero 6, more color toward the end than there is in the beginning. Trying to find films that you understood. Ex Machina, Machina. I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but does anyone know what the red lines are?
They're in the lockdown.
The lockdown, exactly, right? So while he's talking to her, it goes on lockdown, and they're able to talk for a little bit, or they think so. But anyway, so there's this repetition of that striping of red across. I just love it. Just such a beautiful fixation. The blue is the night scenes. The movie is essentially black and white, right? Except for it's been colored. Watch it again if you didn't realize. But the night scenes are all pretty much black and white, just with this blue coloring to the background of it. And then this is the dust storm, the lightning bolts and stuff. Anyway, what does this have to do with computer? Oh, right. So I want to talk about computer games and cinema. Scott Pilgrim, versus the world, of course, right? The movie itself is a video game. There's points being scored. There's all those elements of video games. And then I started pulling from my files, what are the video games that have been made into movies? Resident Evil Apocalypse, Afterlife, Tomb Raider. It goes on and on. I don't know what this one is, it's not labeled. But what it led me to was to start to think about, what about games? Do games have similar color palettes? Do they also, long narrative games, do they have moments of climax? Do they increase in color and energy and excitement and flashes of light toward the end? So just this last week, I started making fixations of games. So this is Mario Brothers playthrough. It's too early for me to start, pulling out like ideas, big ideas. But right, blue sky, underground. And again, I'm not a big gamer, so I'm waiting for other people to make these connections. So, as a video artist, again, I'm always looking for this intersection between video, computer generation, 3D modeling. So this is the opening scenes from the film Tron, which I formed into an amphora. I actually have created the entire movie as an amphora spinning on its axis. The program I wrote analyzes brightness pixel value and creates a z-coordinate out of it. So the brighter the image is, the more spiky it is. So this one doesn't have a lot of spike, but the lights stick out a little bit further. So as an artist, this is the way that I've been playing with things, and I've been trying to make them more game-like. I've been thinking about a puzzle game in which it's a moving movie, like a Rubik's Cube that has a moving movie on it. I don't know how, again, I just come up with the ideas. But I want you to think about and notice the grid in Tron, right? The grid, the idea of, the way a computer understands the world, by breaking it down into lines. This grid's going to show up again later in a little bit. So when I was 9 and started exploring ideas of gaming, ideas of movies, narrative stories, my first exposure to a game that I loved was Dragon's Lair. Anyone know Dragon's Lair? Okay. I had a clip, but I didn't get a chance to put it into the presentation. Dragon's Lair was a video disc movie, or a video disc video game, so that it played an animated movie that you then controlled. Because all the different things that you could do have to be pre-recorded and animated, it took about a second and a half for it to actually jump to play that you've died or play your character moving. So it was not a very fun game to play. And it cost 50 cents, 2 quarters. Anyway, Google it, Dragon's Lair, Space Ace, all these just incredible creative games that were narrative stories, right? Don Bluth animated them. That's the guy that made American Tail, the Fievel story, you know. Again, probably beyond. But he worked for Disney for a long time. So this led me to the idea and research into cutscenes and how cutscenes interact with, create narrative. And we're all familiar probably with the very first cutscene from the old arcade game, Pac-Man. This played between levels. It was exciting back then. Second intermission. His ghosty thing gets stuck on a nail. Right? Same music. Lo-fi. I don't know exactly what's going on. And then Miss Pac-Man, right, stepped up the game a little bit, started to actually tell a story rather than just have these short cutscenes. They meet. It's love at first sight. And then Pac-Man Jr. came along, I won't show that part. So cutscenes began with Pac-Man. They started evolving, right? My Commodore 64, I saw my very first cutscenes. Some gangster game. This was a big deal on Commodore 64. This like blew my mind when I first saw this. Right? Not a lot's happening. Yeah, thanks. The music's terrible, but right, that's where we began. This idea of the cutscene, which was right something that was animated between levels. To give us a story, right? Because the games weren't complicated enough to get stories. So the term was coined in 1987 by Ron Gilbert, creator of Maniac Mansion, a whole bunch of other games. He programmed for all different games, Commodore 64, Atari, through the 90s. And this was his first cutscene. Did not have any sound. But it set up a storyline for the game, right? Which started becoming increasingly more important in games, other than sound. Right? Before this, games were just, there's Mario, there's Donkey Kong and Mario's trying to save Princess Peach. What's her name? I mean, narrative had been in games for a long time. There was Zork, there was, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There had been a huge history of text-based adventures, right, on computers. Because they're the first things that you were able to do. But it was this blending that was starting to happen in the 80s of let's bring the story in with the graphics, and let's have them work together, right? It's moving. Again, that was a big deal back then. We only had 64K to work with. So later, right, with the introduction of CD-ROMs on Sega Genesis in 1993, we get this thing, the full motion video, right, which is now being used a lot, right, in which fully rendered video could be included on the CD-ROM, which would allow the cutscenes to have real action and adventure, rather than just pixelated jumpiness. Right? So with Sega Genesis, suddenly they were able to use more powerful computers to render out long animated scenes, right, and then store them on the CD-ROM, so that it was better than it had ever been before. And over the years, they got better and better. Okay, I guess that's anyway. Right? They started getting more and more story-based. The text adventures and the arcade-style games started melding together, giving us real excitement, energy, passion, characters that you can feel for, right? She's pleading for Adam's life.
Mother was right. If we had waited any longer, it would have been the end of those we had come to rescue, and the end of us as well. I knew that, but
it's a movie, right? It's using all the tools of cinema, point of view, moving cameras, right? Different types of shots, characters, actions, plots, increase in tension, energy, culminating into the future, right? You guys know this game?
I can't see it well enough.
She's fighting Jack the Ripper.
I don't know.
Assassin's Creed, Jack the Ripper story. Again, I don't know. But right, all the elements of cinema are now fully integrated into gaming, right? We have mood lighting, we have points of view, we have rotating images. We've got the cut screen with the grid from Tron in it, in this little,
yes.
actually this is the final scene. Spoiler alert.
That's why the gunman must be raised all the time. Rest in peace now, Jack. You are twisted our minds.
She looks like she's about to. Right? And that's where we're at now. Is this fully integrated world where games and films work together? I'm going to be very, very And the reverse is happening. There's a gamification of films at the same time. Indiana Jones, 1984. Or no, actually this is later. This is Temple of Doom, so 87, I think. When I saw this movie, I said, they did that to make it into a video game. And it's been happening more and more to movies. The latest Harry Potter films, right, the scenes are made so that when it goes to a video game, it's easily translatable into a video game. Can anyone think of another movie that looks like a video game, like looks like they made it so that it could be ported directly into a video game without having to do too much work? The storyline.
Some of the stuff in the Hobbit movies.
Say that again?
Some of the stuff in the Hobbit movies.
Right, yes, absolutely. The Hobbit movies are very video gamey, right? There was a video game, it was not this exciting though. It was a little cart game like this, back and forth. Original arcades version. Well, I'm just going to need to wrap up soon, so I'm just going to, you can watch on YouTube, like you can everything else. So that's what's happening. In fact, every new Avengers movie, right, there seems to be scenes that are made to become a game, right? They know their market. They know that the market for gaming is the same as the market for those action movies. So they're making this connection. So games are becoming more like movies are becoming more like games. Real quick aside, there was a movie in 1984 called Clue, which is based on the game Clue, which when they distributed it, there was 4 different endings. Depending on what theater you went to, you would see a different ending. When they released it onto video, they put all 4 different endings on it, so you could like get to see what other people saw. Right? So this idea of mixing games together with cinema is It's not new. But what's interesting is I started looking at the research, and again, the reason I teach is so that I can learn. I've learned so much more about games in this last week than I have, the last 2 years. I started looking at the research, and is this a name that's familiar to you guys?
I have not seen that.
Okay. Something that someone would know, because I don't know anything about it, but I found this quote. And he's talking about how ludologists, am I saying that right? And narratologists, like how ludologists look down upon narratologists, and narratologists look down on ludologists, and how, right, they both think that they have the lock on the next level of the world, right? What the world's going to be like. Is it going to be like a game? Is it going to be more like a narrative? But anyway, he said, luckily, outside of theory, people are usually excellent at distinguishing between narrative situations and gaming situations. If I throw a ball at you, I don't expect you to drop it and wait for it to start telling a story, right? But I think that line is getting blurred more and more as games become more like movies and movies become more like games. And when you're designing games in the future, think about what it is that you love from your favorite movies. Character, plot, climax, conflict, all those essential things that make it really interesting. All right, thanks so much.